You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Michael Winkleman, partner at Lipcon, Margulies Winkleman, PA, practicing in maritime law, representing passenger and crew members injured on ships worldwide, located in Miami. How are you?
I'm doing great, Benny. How about you?
Good. Thanks for coming on. It's nice to finally meet you virtually.
No, thank you for having me. I love the podcast. I think it's a great resource, and I think it's really a wonderful tool to help humanize attorneys, and that's something that's always a good thing for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm having a lot of fun doing it and meeting people from everywhere, so we appreciate that. So basically here on Lawyer Stories, we do like to talk about the story, like why you went to law school, like what was your motivation. It could be something simple, or it could be something, like a crazy dream that you had. But let's just start, like, where are you from? Born and raised?
Born and raised Miami, Florida.
Nice. Love it.
That's an easy one.
Okay. So, like, are you a Miami Heat fan by any chance?
Huge Miami Heat fan.
Oh.
Season ticket holder for forever and a day. So.
Oh, come on. I'm a huge Celtics fan. All right. So.
Well, all right. If they go to Game 7, you come to Miami and we'll go together.
Look at that. I love it. I'm there. Don't you tempt me. I've been watching the Celtics longer than the Heat been around in '88. All right. Anyway.
Probably true. Yeah.
So born and raised Miami, love Miami. We actually threw our first Lawyer Stories networking event down in Miami, the first and only one before COVID hit. We collaborated with another group. It was a great time. So at what point did you know you wanted to be a lawyer?
Well, so my journey is something of a fun one. After I finished undergrad, I spent several years in Hollywood pursuing an acting career.
Very cool. Where were you in undergrad?
I went to Duke, and
Wow.
I finished up at Florida International University.
Very
Long
cool.
story we can't get into without a few beers. But anyway,
Okay.
But so post undergrad, went to Hollywood, and somehow I got this nugget of advice from Tom Cruise, not personally, but just through the ethosphere, that
It's great.
he gave it 3 years, and unless he was a movie star, he was going to go to law school. So I said, okay, that's my motto. I'm going to give it 3 years. If I don't have some big hit, I'm going to go to law school. Clearly, I'm a lawyer now, so no big hit, and now I'm in law school. But my claim to fame is a really bad B horror movie that I starred in called Dark Walker.
That's amazing. You have a movie out there. Where can we watch this? Is it like YouTube or?
It's on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime. You can find it anywhere.
That's great. Do you have?
I would caution you. It's really bad.
Would you prefer us use a clip from that or this podcast when we post it?
You could do both. There's definitely some great. I mean, again, if the goal of the podcast is to humanize lawyers, I think it's a great way to humanize me.
Do you have an IMBD like profile out there? Or?
I do, yeah.
You do? Wow. Okay. Very good. That's really neat
You
information.
should see my headshot. I was like 20 pounds lighter.
Really? I don't know about that. So you went to St. Thomas Law. So you ended up back in Miami, St. Thomas, acting career. You made your movie. You head back to Miami. What was your law school experience like?
I loved it. I always felt I had an advantage, and I think all law students have an advantage. Those who go out into the real world rather than going directly to law school, because I think getting that like tablespoonful of the real world really gives you an advantage. Whereas if you come straight through undergrad, I don't think you have the same mentality. So for me, coming from Hollywood to law school, I love the structure. I love the opportunity. I love St. Thomas, and definitely excelled from day one. But I never thought I was really the smartest guy in the class, but I used the skills that I had to my advantage. So there was never a class where I wasn't participating in class, raising my hand, wanting to talk about a case. Because for me, I like public speaking. I'm comfortable talking, comfortable in front of a camera. So I knew that was a good way for me to engender myself to the teacher, be engaged, things of that nature.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible. I think you're so spot on. I took a year off before law school. I probably could have taken more time off, but I'm afraid I was going to get sucked away by a different career. But I think that that's really smart, because one thing I often note is you also learn like time management, right? Like you know how to set up your day better, whether you make law school like a 9 to 5 or whatnot. And I think also with speaking, I mean, you were an actor, but I think it helps you be a little more mature and ready to just like speak out in class where, believe me, there are other kids that sit there, they want to talk, but they're just too, they're not ready maybe to speak out until they get called on by the professor. And then that's
100%.
another story. Yeah.
100%. Well, number one, I think the key to success in law school is treating it like a 9 to 5 job. And if you had a 9 to 5 job and you treat law school like a 9 to 5 job, you're going to do fine. You're going to excel. You're going to pass law school. You're going to pass the bar. But then I think the nice thing about being an attorney, and especially to young attorneys, is if you're not comfortable talking, that's okay. There's a million different types of lawyer you could be. You don't have to be a litigator. You don't have to be in court. You can do any other number of things that appeal to your skill set.
I think that's good advice. So how did you end up in maritime law? Where did the interest start?
Well, I always knew I wanted to do personal injury because I always knew I wanted to be in a courtroom. So I always wanted to be a litigator. And I think just being from Miami, having a love for water, I early on recognized that maritime law is sort of a little niche in Miami that allows you to do personal injury, but instead of doing auto accidents and things of that nature, you're doing boat accidents. And of course, what's our main specialization is really cruise ship accidents. So it's sort of really just the love of Miami and the water is what I think initially directed me towards maritime law.
Okay. So it appears you clerked for Lipcon, Margulies. I hope I'm saying that correctly. You clerked for them while you were in law school, and obviously before your name was on like the letterhead, because you're a partner now. Congratulations. That's super cool. So like what importance would you say to a law student having a clerkship is? Like, is having a clerkship important to law students?
I think it's hugely important. And that's probably one of the first pieces of advice I give to all the clerks who come and clerk with us is arguably more important than moot court, mock trial, law review is finding a firm that you're going to work with when you can during law school. Because if you have an opportunity to get your foot in the door of a prospective employer, you better put your foot in that door.
Right.
That's exactly what happened for me. I clerked with them starting after my first year of law school, loved it, kept clerking all the way through to where when I went out, I did an internship at the 3rd District Court of Appeals, which is the Miami Appellate Court. But then right from then on, I was working at the firm. And I always say, instead of being a new lawyer where you hit the ground walking, you hit the ground running. So hugely important. Find a firm to clerk with, 100%.
So that played an important role in your career. I mean, obviously you've been there like 15 years or so after the clerkship. So what is it about the firm that you really liked?
Well, I think I liked a number of things. I mean, I love the area of law. I think the area of law is fascinating. I think it has so many little unique aspects to it that make it really just a fascinating practice.
Yep.
I love that it's extensively a federal court practice. I like being in federal courts. And I really always love the culture of the firm. I think the culture of the firm has been something that it's just fun to be there. It's a positive environment. But at the same time, we're working extremely hard in order to fight for our clients. So I think it's the combination of those three things that really just made it a great fit for me.
Got it. So we talk about maritime law. Can you tell us briefly what that is?
Sure. I mean, in its simplest, maritime law is just basically the law of the ocean.
That's awesome.
You got 50 different laws of each different state. You've got federal law, which is obviously, has a number of different applications. But then admiralty and maritime law is really the law of the seas, the high seas. So it's a very unique body of law. There's a whole separate set of common law called the general maritime law. There are various federal statutes that apply, but it's just sort of a unique little body of law that applies to things that happen on navigable waterways, whether they're rivers or oceans or things of that nature.
Is it mostly cruise ships? Is that where you're finding the biggest cases, would you say?
Well, so for what I do, it's mostly cruise ship cases.
Okay.
I would say plus 90% of our practice is either cruise ship passengers or cruise ship crew members that get injured. We represent them in injury cases against the world's major cruise lines. But that's just my sort of little universe. Outside of that, the maritime law encompasses, recreational boating accidents, parasailing accidents, but also cargo-related accidents or issues, which is really sort of a whole separate other side of maritime law. But for my universe, it's really maritime personal injury with a focus on cruise ship cases. But we definitely have occasional boating accidents, parasailing accidents,
right,
scuba diving accidents, things of that nature.
Because you go to your website and there is so many topics that you all cover, so many areas of law. Like one that kind of struck me was I think it was like cruise ship like rape or something like that. I don't want to really get into that topic, but one thing it kind of made me think of is because I've been on like one cruise in my life, like maybe one or two, but is there like a holding cell like down in the cruise ship that like they like throw some, and not just like, I don't, maybe this isn't like a good question for rape, but like maybe like just if somebody does something on the ship, like is that true or false? Like they have like a jail like in down in the basement of the cruise ship until they get to shore.
True, 100% true. There's
Really?
also a morgue. So if someone dies, they have an area where they can keep the body.
Wow.
But just to briefly touch on it in terms of cruise ship rapes and sexual assaults, I always say it's a hidden epidemic. People don't know about it, but all the time, passengers and crew members are getting raped and sexually assaulted on cruise ships. It's definitely something of a niche for us. It's really a terrible thing that happens. I think it has to do with a number of factors, which include dramatic overservice of alcohol, and it has to do with really lax law enforcement, which is really one of the other unique things about maritime law or cruise ship law, is that when you're on that cruise ship, you're no longer in the US, you're no longer in Florida, you're not in Miami. You're strictly speaking subject to the laws of the flag of the vessel, which could be Bahamas, Panama, Liberia. And as you would probably guess, many of these are particularly lawless jurisdictions. So there's that element of lawlessness, including the fact that there's no independent police force, it's security guards for the ship. You have this just really nasty recipe that allows this hidden epidemic of rapes and sexual assaults to occur. But I won't go any further in that. We won't dive down that rabbit hole any further.
Yeah, no, that was just something that struck me as like, wow, like that's awful. So what would your advice be for a passenger, somebody going on vacation, going on a cruise, to sort of limit their liability?
So, well, I mean, if I'm giving advice to a passenger, it's going to be how to keep yourself and your family safe.
How to keep it? Yes, that's what.
Yeah, and what I always, it's the cruise line that's worried about limiting their liability.
Right.
That's not. They're never.
That's what I meant. So.
I got you. I hear you. I always tell them, don't leave your common sense at the port.
Okay.
Because I think people think they're on this cruise ship and they're in this bubble of safety when it's anything but that, because really it's the functional equivalent of a floating city. So, when I go to New York City, I don't leave my common sense in Miami. I bring it with me and I'm careful and I'm watching out for myself and my kids. And I think you need to do the same things when you're on a cruise ship. But I think the biggest danger for most adults is they don't have to drive anywhere, Benny. So that means, hey, I can have that extra drink or two. And, once you have that extra drink or two, that's when bad things start to happen. So.
And the thing is with those, some of those cruise ships, they allow you to have like up to 15 drinks or something like that. So it's almost like they want to use, like if something happens, they want to be able to use the assumption of risk or like that sort of a defense, right? Is that sort of accurate? Yeah.
Yeah. So now they all have these drink packages, unlimited drink packages.
Right.
Last time I read one, it's pretty much like you can have up to a drink an hour. I think it's for up to 12 hours. So you can have like 12 drinks, which, as you can imagine, is going to help you blow like a 0.25 and could kill you in and of itself. But yes, you're right. But it does cut both ways. I mean, we use that argument over time to say to say they were negligent in the overservice of alcohol, but that cuts both ways. If I'm going to go on a cruise ship and have 12 drinks, some of that responsibility's got to be on me.
Sure.
It cuts both ways.
Absolutely. And so how would you say a maritime lawyer can better handle an accident in the water than a regular personal injury attorney?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, to me, I think the easiest answer is, when you break your leg, you don't go and see a psychiatrist. You go and see an orthopedist or an orthopedic surgeon. So, if you have a car accident, you should go find an auto accident attorney. If you need to sell your house, you should go and talk to a real estate attorney. But if you have an issue that involves the sea or the oceans, then you should call a maritime attorney, because these are just any number of the specializations that exist in the law that you really need to find a specialist. And I think you probably see this doing what you do more than I do, Benny, is just the hyper specialization of the law nowadays. There's fewer and fewer just open door attorneys that come in and do everything, whatever you want. Everyone's sort of more specialized in class action work, maritime work, auto accident work, medical malpractice, you name it.
Got it. So like, what are some of the specific laws that are involved in handling a maritime case?
Well, so one of the big ones is the general maritime law, which is a body of federal common law or judge-made law. So that's a completely separate set of case law that basically applies only to maritime cases. At the end of the day, there's some similarity insofar as they're negligence cases. So you've got duty, breach, causation, damages, just like you would in an auto accident or a slip and fall in Walmart. But where the differences come in death cases, you fall under something called the Death in the High Seas Act, which is completely different than most state wrongful death damage statutes, which is very unique. And then there's literally an infinite number of nuances to maritime law that make it so dangerous for a non-maritime practitioner to try to take on those cases. And two of the biggest dangers are more than likely the fact that in cruise ship cases in particular, they have a shortened statute of limitations. So if you fell in Walmart and broke your leg, Benny, you would have 4 years to bring your case. That exact same case on a cruise ship, you fell and you broke your leg, you would have a 1 year statute of limitations to file the case and a 6-month notice provision. In other words, you would have to give them notice within 6 months.
Wow.
So we see lawyers calling us all the time, non-maritime lawyers, that say, hey, it's been 1.5 years, I didn't file, is there anything I could do? And I unfortunately generally have to say, yeah, you need to call your malpractice carrier.
Oh, geez.
It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. Did that happen a lot?
All the time. I would say on average, probably a dozen times a year, we get calls from attorneys that have failed to abide by the statute of limitations. The other one being, Benny, is that so wherever you're from, Texas, Alaska, wherever, you have to sue in Miami, Florida, based on what's called the forum selection clause. So when you bought that cruise that you went on, it said that if you get hurt, you got to sue in Miami, Florida. A lot of times lawyers will file in the wrong jurisdiction, and there's case law that says you're not tolling the statute of limitations when you file in the incorrect venue.
How does an attorney do that? Like sit on the case for like a year, doesn't give the 6-month notice? How does that happen? Like, I mean, are they just not acting fast enough on the case that they have, or they think they have more time, or they collecting discovery? Like, what do you think the big reason for that is?
My guess, well, number one, it's the danger of taking on a case that you're not comfortable with. And I get calls all the time from friends who want advice on this, that, and the other thing. And if I don't feel comfortable, I'll say, look, I really don't feel comfortable giving you strict legal advice because it's just not my area of expertise. But here's sort of my knee-jerk reaction. And here's what I think, and here's what I recommend you do. But why do I think it happens otherwise is, I don't know, there's this like legal time vortex for lawyers that you pick up a file and you look at it and you put it down thinking you're going to pick it up a week later, and you don't pick it up for 6 months later. Wow. And in doing what I do, that's a very dangerous thing where bad things can happen, including malpracticing a case. So
right. Yeah, that's difficult.
That would be my general assumption as to why non-maritime lawyers commit malpractice in those cases.
Yeah. And so our maritime attorneys, they're not limited to the state that they actually practice in, right? Like you could take a case for somebody who lives, we're just saying like in a different state,
sure, and
try it. Yeah.
Well, all right. Most strictly speaking, I'm licensed in Florida. I'm licensed in Colorado.
Okay.
We have lawyers. We have 14 lawyers. We have lawyers licensed in also Georgia, Seattle, California, Hawaii. But strictly speaking, I can only practice law in those 2 jurisdictions. Of course, if there was a case that we had in Texas, I could go pro hac vice and try to swear in for that one time. Mm-hmm. But I think what's more unique is in our world of international maritime law, we literally handle cases all over the world. We've handled cases in Italy, France, India, Panama.
Wow.
You name it, we've handled it. And it's one of my favorite things of my job is being able to, I love getting a lead where it's someone from the Philippines or Indonesia that was working on a shipping company from Singapore for an employer that was German. And there are these sort of law school exams as where's the proper place to file. But in those cases, I may have to sue in the United Arab Emirates. But that to me is not a bar. I'm still going to try to work to either find counsel that's there, or sometimes with arbitration agreements to initiate arbitrations, you don't even need to be licensed in that jurisdiction.
Wow.
So we definitely have a worldwide scope to our practice.
It's amazing. Is there a routine case that you see more often than not, or more often than others, like a case on a cruise ship, like a sort of accident that you see happen more that comes across your desk?
Yeah, I mean, the classic cruise ship accidents are slip and fall on the buffet line or slip and fall by the pool. Those, I would say that those by far would be the 2 most common.
Okay, gotcha. Wow. So in the buffet line too, huh? No way.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You know, someone has a little spill, someone's got the drink in one hand. I consider myself a buffet aficionado. So I know the techniques for it, but you've got a plate in one hand, a drink in one other hand, and little thing spills, and they don't have adequate people cleaning it up, or things of that nature, and that equals negligence in my eyes.
So, like, do you even, now that you do all this work, do you go on cruises or no? Like, is this something that you take your family on? Like, do they come in and they like Royal Caribbean's like, not this guy, like he's gonna.
Frankly, I'm not sure if they would allow me on the vessel.
Yeah,
but I personally love cruises. It's been a few years since I've gone, and it's funny living in Miami. I always say Miami and South Floridians, we don't really take advantage of it because we've got all these giant, beautiful cruise ships that are sitting right there. But they're just, for some reason, being from South Florida, it's not as popular as a vacation.
Yeah, totally. So you've been named to like best lawyers in America, super lawyers, rising stars. What do all those things mean to you?
I think they mean a ton, and I think they really mean sort of validation for all the time and the effort that I put in, not just for myself as to wanting to be a killer attorney, but also for all the time and effort I put in for my clients and all the great results that we got for them. So, I mean, it really does mean a lot, and I take a lot of pride in it. I mean, I just celebrated my 15th anniversary, and I'm telling you, it feels like it went by like that.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So what advice do you have for someone who wants to go into maritime law?
Specifically in the maritime law, I would say the key is you need to, while you're in law school, find a maritime law firm and try to clerk for them.
Yeah.
Whether it's someone in South Florida, whether it's us, and we're always, feel free to email us anytime. I'm happy to look at your resume, or whether it's in California or in Texas or New York. I think that's the key. But I think my advice for any young attorney is, how well you do as an attorney is entirely determined by how hard you work and how great of an attorney you want to be. Nobody hands it to you. You've got to go and get it, and you've got to be willing to have the gumption to go and put in the time and the effort to make yourself a great attorney.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Michael, did you have any mentors coming through the legal world, from law school through your clerkship to being your first year at a firm to becoming partner? What can you say about that?
Definitely. I was lucky because I knew through high school the Russamano family, and Herman Russamano is past president of Florida Bar, unbelievable trial lawyer, and he happened to be the teacher, or I guess the professor, for lack of a better term, during mock trial when I was at St. Thomas. Always considered him an excellent mentor. In addition to that, I would say Chuck Lipcon and Jason Margulies would be my two primary mentors. Two great guys, two great attorneys, yet two very different attorneys. And That's why I think it's good to not only have a mentor, I think you should try to have multiple mentors.
Multiple. There you go.
Because you can have 10 different attorneys, and those 10 different attorneys are going to do 10 different things in 10 different situations. So that's where I think you really learn from seeing so many different approaches to it. Although I think that, the art of being a lawyer is making decisions under difficult circumstances. And I think the funny thing is the first step is learning is the key is just making a decision. Some people are just paralyzed with fear of even making a decision and need to ask 10 other people before they can make that decision. A big piece of advice: make the decision. That's going to start a ripple effect. It's going to have you make 10 other decisions, and just keep going with it. Don't have decision-making fear.
So what do you do if you get all the different advice from different people? If it's the same case, I know you said different cases, but what if it's the same case and you're hearing like 5 different people tell you 5 different things? How do you go about making the decision?
100% just go with your gut. Go with that that tells you what is the right path to take. I mean, if you're in trial, that's a completely different animal, and you got to make the decision like that. And that you just make the decision, you go for it, and you roll with the punches. If you've got a little bit more time to deliberate, I generally find that when you're having conversations with mentors or partners or colleagues, just that conversation process helps you to better formalize the path that you're going to take to make the right decisions.
Gotcha. Speaking of trial, are you in trial a lot, or would you say a lot of the cases settle?
I wish I was in trial more. I've done about 15 trials in 15 years, so that shows you it's about, well, I didn't really start trying too many until a little bit later in my career, but I would say on average it's 1 to 2 per year. Love trying cases. I think it's the ultimate art form in our profession and the ultimate challenge. But yeah, I mean, the entire legal system is designed to help facilitate resolution of cases, A, and B, I think part of my job as an attorney is to work towards a resolution, because anytime you step into a courtroom, you're taking on a huge amount of risk. I personally love that risk, and I'm willing to take that risk. But the way I analyze it, where we're a law firm with 15 attorneys, 14 attorneys, and roughly 500 cases is very different than the way that my client would assess risk.
Got it.
So I don't put my views on risk in the place of my clients. So
right.
if there's a fair number on the table, the analysis is, hey, clients, this is what they're offering. This is what I think is fair. We certainly could go for the gold and try to get more, but you're taking a huge risk in doing that because you can walk out. You never know what's going to happen in the courtroom. You could walk out with nothing.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're in the right place, obviously, to be doing, maritime personal injury. And tell us about some of the other cases that you get besides, the cruise ship, like some personal injury cases that you're working on and trying to get settlements or potentially go to trial.
Well, so, I mean, outside of the wheelhouse cases, the really common cases, slip and falls by the buffet line or by the
yep.
A large amount of rapes and sexual assaults on ships, which are terrible, but we handle a lot of them. We have a very high profile case going on now related to a volcano that erupted in New Zealand a couple of years ago. We represent a number of the families that were some of them were killed or they were catastrophically burned. That's a case that's coming up later this year against Royal Caribbean. I hope those cases go to trial because I think it will be an opportunity for vindication for these families who lost people that were near and dear to them or that were catastrophically burned. But yeah, really, one of the unique things about maritime law is the things that happen at sea can be just bizarre, crazy, fascinating. So I really enjoy doing it.
Gotcha. So on your website, it talks about a $4.4 million verdict for a longshoreman injured at a Miami port, excuse me. So do you want to tell us briefly about that?
Sure. That believe it or not, that was actually my first trial, Benny, which was a great way to start. And that was, about 12 years ago. So yeah, that was a crew member, a longshoreman. Longshoremen are the gentlemen that work at the ports, basically loading and unloading cargo. He was driving this gigantic top loader, and he basically went over an area where they were doing underground construction. It wasn't properly shored up, and his top loader collapsed into it.
Oh no!
He got badly hurt. Ended up having a huge spinal surgery, and yeah, it was a. Looking back on it, it was a fun case. The client's name was Willie Walker. Still a friend, great guy.
That's awesome.
We still keep in touch, and really, I think that's probably the best part about my job is that as hard as I work, I'm doing it all on behalf of someone else.
Right. It's important.
For Willie, I fought for years for him, and he saw all the effort that we put in on his behalf, and we're still buddies. And to me, all that time and effort paid off to try to fight for him. Having said that, had we lost that case, I think he wouldn't be as happy, of course, but he would have seen how hard that we worked on his case. And at least we could have taken some solace on that in having a person's day in court.
Yeah, no, it's a super important job. And like, what kind of characteristics do you think a personal injury attorney needs? Like when they're dealing with somebody who's been through an injury that obviously puts them in a vulnerable position, sometimes the most vulnerable position of their life.
Sure. Well, I think I think the key in dealing with injured clients is compassion and empathy. And I always say, I occasionally wear a hat of something like a therapist or a psychologist because I genuinely think that in cases where there is a lawsuit, the lawsuit itself acts as a certain level of the grieving process or the recovery process and the closure process. Right. But I know I see it all the time that when a case is resolved, I think it really gives a big opportunity for a client who's been badly hurt to close that chapter and move on to another chapter. So really, I think the keys are when you're dealing with injured clients is compassion and empathy.
Gotcha. Love that. Two huge and important characteristics of a personal injury lawyer. Michael Winkleman, that's great. So Mike, any other advice that you want to give the Lawyer Stories community?
Yeah, I think the other part of it is if you're going to be a lawyer, work your tail off to be the best lawyer you can, but also work your tail off to find that area of the law that you really love doing.
Right.
I consider myself so lucky and blessed because I really love my job and I love doing it.
It's important.
If you don't like the first job you have, try another one. If you don't like the second area of law you try a third one. Keep searching for that love that gives you that passion to show up on a daily basis where you want to open your inbox first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of young attorneys go through that with their first job. They're not always very enamored with it. So I think that's, that says a lot about you as an attorney and the firm that you're working for, that you were able to be a clerk and then basically spend your career there so far, 15 years. So congratulations to you. That's really a job well done.
Let me give the other side of that, Benny, though, just to complete the thought, though, is it wasn't always easy. There were years when I would be on the verge of tears working so hard and getting yelled at and things weren't going right. So it's not always easy. You got to work through 5 years. So it's a balance between finding what you love, but also being willing to put in the hard work and the time and the effort and the grit and the determination, because the first 5 years, you're going to be learning a ton. You might not love it, but if you're feeling like, boy, where you see yourself in 5 years and it could be a job that you love, stick with it, fight hard to get to there.
That's good. Yeah. And
a little more nuance to my advice.
Yeah, I get it.
Until you find the easy job.
Yeah, well, I definitely wasn't suggesting it was easy. I just think it. You have like, for a firm like, for the firm to keep you for so long and to want you to grow with them, they obviously see a certain amount of integrity and hard work, and you were able to have that vision for the 5 years forward, and so that's that's pretty tremendous. For sure. A lot of people switch jobs very, very quickly now, so. I think that definitely says a lot about your work ethic.
That's the other side of the coin.
Yeah. So, okay. Was there anything else that I left out today that we did not discuss that you want to cover?
No, Benny, you do a killer interview. And again, I thank you for all your efforts with your podcast. I really think it's important to shine a light on the humanity of lawyers. We're often given a bad reputation, but I think once you peel off that first layer of the onion of us oftentimes being aggressive or assertive, we're normal people too.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. I love doing this. Stay right there. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for taking the time today. Lawyer Stories community, wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.